She sent one message to the wrong number, and within minutes, a billionaire's helicopter was at her door, dragging her back into a past she tried to escape. A forbidden night, a hidden baby, and a man who refuses to lose her again collide in a storm of secrets and desire. The world will soon know what she's been trying desperately to hide, and danger creeps closer with every breath she takes. Was this destiny giving her a second chance at love, or a mistake powerful enough to destroy all three hearts forever? Only the end will reveal the truth, and you won't see it coming. It feels amazing to have you here again. Where are you listening from right now? Drop your country or city in the comments, because I really want to know who's still rocking with me, especially my loyal regular listeners who never miss a single episode. Your support means everything. So if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on the notifications, and get ready, because we're about to dive straight into another emotional, suspense-filled love story you definitely don't want to miss. Let's jump in. Mia sat alone in her tiny apartment, back pressed against the cool wall as she stared at the black and white ultrasound photo glowing on her dim phone screen, a photo she had stared at 1,000 times, yet still couldn't believe was real. Her cracked phone flickered every few seconds, like it was tired of carrying the weight of her life too. She wiped her tear-stained eyes with the back of her hand, trying to steady her breathing, but every inhale trembled with fear. She typed slowly, thumbs shaking as she poured everything she'd bottled up for weeks into a message meant for her support counselor Anna, the only person who still checked if she was alive after the messy breakup that destroyed her confidence and her heart. Mia's screen smeared with tears until she could barely see the words, her mind replaying every second of the night. Her ex shoved her into the dresser, and her phone slipped from her hand, cracking the glass and part of her spirit. She blinked, forcing the memory down, and typed faster, wanting to send the message before she changed her mind and deleted everything like always. Her breath hitched when her finger slipped and hit send too fast. The screen froze for a moment. She tapped desperately, but the glitching phone made its own decision. The message flew away before she checked the contact name properly. She frowned, confused, wiping the screen again. And then her heart dropped into an empty abyss. The contact wasn't Anna. It was Adrian Reed. Her stomach flipped so violently she had to grab the edge of the table to steady herself. Adrian Reed, the billionaire she once worked for in his corporate tower of glass and titanium, the same Adrian Reed whose cold exterior she once saw melt for one night, the night he unexpectedly broke down in her arms, mourning his mother's death. The only man she ever really let herself feel something for. And it was the same man who vanished by morning, replaced by silence and an assistant delivering the cruel message that her job was terminated effective immediately. She thought she was nothing more than a moment of weakness for him, a secret he needed to erase. And now he had her ultrasound photo, and every word she wrote about her fear, her loneliness, and a baby she never expected. Panic smothered her. She tapped into the chat, rapidly deleting the message from her side, praying the glitchy phone didn't send properly, praying it was just a digital hiccup and nothing more. She stared as the message disappeared, a small sigh of relief slipping out, until the screen lit up again, with 3 dots bouncing. He was typing. Her throat tightened. Why would he type back? Why would he even care? She backed away from the phone like it was something dangerous that might explode at any second. Her heart thumped against her ribs so loudly she thought the neighbors might hear it. She covered her mouth to stop a sob from escaping, because none of this made sense. He wasn't supposed to be dragged into her life again. He belonged to another world, a world of private jets, charity galas, and power. Not tiny apartments with peeling paint and an old microwave that sparked when plugged in. She remembered his hands trembling that night. He clung to her like she was the last safe place in the universe. How his forehead rested against hers as he whispered he didn't know who he could trust anymore. That night felt real. until reality returned and she was pushed out of his life like a mistake he didn't want to face. Her phone buzzed sharply on the table, vibrating so forcefully it nearly fell to the floor. Mia didn't want to look. She shook her head as if she could undo time by refusing to acknowledge the universe's cruel joke. But curiosity scratched at her, clawing through her panic. She reached for the phone, with fingers trembling so hard she could barely unlock the screen. A notification banner appeared, glowing bright in the dim room. It wasn't a long text she expected. It was a short, sharp voice note from him, Adrian Reed. Her pulse faltered. She stared at the voice message bubble like touching it would change everything she thought she had under control. For a moment, she considered blocking him. Change her number. Pretend none of this ever existed. But her thumb had a mind of its own. It tapped play. His voice filled the room, deep, rough, and edged with disbelief. "Mia," he said, her name sounding almost like relief and accusation tangled together. "Tell me the truth. Is that baby mine?" Her breath caught like someone had pressed pause on her lungs. Mine. The word echoed in her mind like thunder. Her knees weakened beneath her, and she sank to the floor, phone still clutched tightly. Her ex, the man who left her standing in the rain with a broken heart, was the only one who knew she was pregnant. No one else, certainly not Adrian. Why would he think that? Then the realization sliced through her. He hadn't forgotten that night. Maybe she wasn't the only one who replayed it in the loneliness of the dark. Before she could respond, before she even found her voice, her phone buzzed again. Another voice note. Her hands shook violently as she raised the phone to her ear. "Don't lie to me," Adrian's voice demanded, raw and breathless. "I deserve to know." Her heart hammered harder, fear and hope warring inside her, a dangerous mix she swore she would never let herself feel again. She shut her eyes, trying to escape his voice, but it felt like he was right there in the room, pulling every buried emotion back to the surface. She forced herself to breathe, to think, to respond, but her voice cracked before she could even form a word. Every insecurity screamed at her. "He won't believe you." He never did. A sudden gust of cold air brushed her face. She realized she had staggered onto the balcony without remembering walking there. The city lights blurred below, sirens echoing distant chaos, as though the world outside sensed her spiraling panic. She placed a protective hand over her belly, whispering to the tiny heartbeat inside, "I'll protect you. I won't let this become another heartbreak." But even as she vowed strength, her phone buzzed again, and she flinched like it was a threat. Then, everything went still. The screen lit up with Adrian's name again, but this time it wasn't a message. It was a call. Her heart slammed into her ribs. She hovered her thumb over the decline button, praying he'd give up. Instead, the call cut, only for his name to flash again, persistent, determined. Her breath trembled as she answered, but before she could speak a word, an earth-shaking roar filled the night. Wind blasted through her hair. A powerful spotlight illuminated her balcony like she was center stage in a show she never auditioned for. She shielded her eyes with her arm, confused, terrified. Her curtains whipped wildly behind her as the sound grew louder, closer, unmistakable. A helicopter hovered above her building. Her gasp was stolen by the wind as two figures in black suits leaned out, scanning the balconies until one pointed directly at her. "Miss Mia!" one shouted through a speaker. "Mr. Reed requests your presence." Immediately, her heart stopped. Her baby kicked. Her world spun. She grabbed the railing as if it was the only real thing keeping her grounded. She tried to step back inside, to slam the door shut and pretend none of this was happening, but her body turned to stone when she saw a tall figure step out from the helicopter, gripping the edge of the doorway as if the wind itself dared to push him away. His tailored suit fluttered violently, his dark hair tousled by the storm of propellers, but his eyes, those intense grey eyes she could never forget, locked directly on her stomach. Adrian Reed had found her, and his face told her that he already had his answer. But she wasn't ready for the question. Mia's fingers trembled as the notification flashed across her cracked screen again, but this time it wasn't a message filled with dots that hinted at his confusion. It was a voice note, and the very sight of his name glowing in the dark made her chest tighten with a mix of dread and nostalgia she never asked to feel again. She swallowed hard before pressing play, and that familiar deep voice, the one she used to secretly crave hearing every morning while working under him, the one that once whispered broken confessions into her ear on the worst night of his life, now echoed raw and trembling through the tiny speakers. "Mia, tell me the truth. Is that baby mine?" The question wasn't just a question. It was a demand wrapped in heartbreak and shock, every syllable cracking through her like glass, shattering under pressure. Her knees weakened, the cold floor of her small balcony suddenly spinning beneath her bare feet, as if the world itself didn't know how to handle that truth being spoken out loud. For months, Mia had carried the weight of that secret alone. The baby kicking under her ribs was the only proof that the love she once buried still existed somewhere in the universe. But how could Adrian even suspect? No one knew about that night, not her immoral ex, not her counselor, not even her own reflection when she tried to convince herself the past was gone. She clutched her belly protectively as panic surged into her throat, remembering that night in painful clarity, Adrian's suit jacket thrown aside after he received the call that his mother had passed away, the way his entire world collapsed in her arms while she was just a nobody employee, and how one unexpected moment of shared grief and vulnerability pulled them into something they never spoke of again. She thought he had forgotten. She thought she meant nothing. And yet, here he was, acting like the truth was already carved into his bones. Her reply wouldn't form, her breath wouldn't steady, because answering him meant admitting everything she swore she would bury forever. She typed, deleted, typed again, but her heart was pounding too violently to make sense of words, and before she could pick the right version of her fear to send, the ground suddenly trembled beneath her, the railing of her small balcony vibrating beneath her grip, as a massive helicopter roared into view above her tiny apartment building. The wind from its blades whipped her hair into chaos, her nightgown flapping wildly against her legs as a blinding spotlight exploded across the night sky and pinned her like prey under a hunter's gaze. Her mouth fell open in shock. Was this real, or some kind of nightmare brought on by her overwhelming stress? She stumbled back, shielding her eyes, but the noise only grew louder. Her neighbor's windows flickered with confused light, curtains shifting as people peeked out, shouting in fear and irritation. Panic shot up her spine like lightning when two men in black suits descended from the helicopter with ropes, landing on the rooftop edge of her building like trained shadows. They moved with purpose, too fast, too sure, and she knew instantly Adrian sent them. Her heart thrashed violently as they reached her balcony, faces stoic, eyes fixed on her with unsettling certainty. One of them called her name, voice booming over the blades. "Miss Mia, Mr. Reed requests your presence." Immediately, her instinct, survival itself, kicked in. She shook her head hard, stumbling backward into her living room, trying to shove the sliding door closed before they could reach her, but the wind fought against her grip as if the world refused to let her escape this confrontation. No, 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 no. She was not ready. She couldn't face him. She wasn't prepared to see the man who disappeared without explanation, the man who left her hoping, confused, shattered, standing in front of her demanding answers she still couldn't give. Her breaths came in short, frantic bursts as she braced her weight against the glass door, but the men were stronger, pushing it open an inch at a time. Time, like fate itself, was forcing her to face the truth she'd run from. And then, a moment that stole all air from her lungs. The rotor noise died down just enough for her to hear the heavy footsteps approaching from behind the suits. The light shifted, the atmosphere changed, and there he was, Adrian Reed, stepping out of the helicopter and onto her balcony as if the sky itself had delivered him to her doorstep. His dark coat whipped behind him under the harsh wind, his jaw tight, eyes burning with a mix of fury and something far more dangerous, hope. His gaze dropped, not to her face at first, but to the slight curve beneath her loose shirt, the very secret she thought she could hide forever. His eyes widened, sharp breath taken in disbelief and confirmation all at once. It was like the world had narrowed into just the three of them, her, him, and the truth that no deleted message could erase. Mia's pulse hammered so violently in her ears she thought she might faint. She wanted to step back further, but there was nowhere left to go. The wall pressed coldly against her spine. Adrian took a single step closer, the expression in his eyes unlike anything she had ever seen from him before. Not the cold CEO mask, not the broken son she once comforted, but something fierce, raw, and terrifyingly sure. He opened his mouth, his voice low, unsteady, but burning with a quiet determination that made her knees buckle. "Mia, is that my child?" Her heart tried to leap out of her chest, her voice trapped, her truth trembling just beneath her lips, and for a terrifying second she thought her legs would give out. She was cornered, she was exposed, she was seconds away from everything exploding. And before she could speak, he took another step forward, as if he already knew the answer. 3. Inside the helicopter, the metal beast cutting through the stormy sky, Mia felt her heartbeat crashing against her ribs like it was trying to escape the chaos unfolding around her. The leather seat beneath her vibrated from the wind's fury outside, yet the most dangerous storm was sitting right in front of her, in the form of a man whose presence once destroyed her world and was somehow now holding it together. Adrian stood there, tall and commanding despite the turbulence, his brows furrowed in a fury he was barely containing. His eyes, those intense grey eyes that once softened under moonlight when he cried against her neck, were now locked onto her like he could see straight into her soul, like every lie and every truth she tried to bury were written on her skin. "Tell me everything," he breathed, voice edged with pain and desperation, as though he had waited months, maybe even years, for this moment. Mia swallowed hard, her throat burning with the fear of telling a truth she was never supposed to speak. She sat straighter, hugging her arms around her as if she could hide from the past, suffocating her. "You want the truth," she whispered, and her voice cracked on the word truth, because truth was the thing that ruined her life once already. Adrian nodded, jaw clenched, his entire body tense with a fear he didn't want her to see, the fear of losing something he never realized he wanted. Mia forced air into her lungs, preparing to open the wound she spent months stitching. "I didn't leave you," she said, her voice trembling like a fragile glass ready to shatter. "Your assistant fired me the next morning. She told me you were done with me. She said the CEO didn't want a nobody distracting him." She blinked through fresh tears as humiliation from that day flooded in, how she had stood outside his skyscraper, heartbroken, alone and terrified, while his world kept spinning without her. Adrian's eyes widened, his breath stumbling as though he had been physically struck. "That's not possible," he growled, and his voice was no longer the controlled billionaire tone. It was raw, furious, almost animal. "I never fired you." His hands slammed against the side rail, metal rattling under the force of his rage. "I woke up wanting to see you again." "I thought you left because you regretted everything." His voice softened, cracking at the edges. "I thought I scared you. I thought you realized I wasn't worth staying for. The vulnerability buried inside those words pierced her like a blade. He wasn't just angry, he was hurt. And that reality was more jarring than the cold city night outside the helicopter windows. Her lips parted in disbelief. He searched for her. He cared. He didn't want to forget that night. Just like her. A sob escaped before she could stop it, her hands covering her mouth as if she could hide the relief mixing with dread inside her chest. Adrian stepped closer, slow and careful, like she was fragile, and he blamed himself for every crack in her heart. "Why didn't you come back?" he asked, voice so soft it hurt. She shook her head, tears streaming. "I thought you were done with me. I thought I was just a mistake you needed to erase." Her voice fell apart on the last word. He reached forward, gently capturing her wrist, lowering her shaking hands away from her face. "You were never a mistake," he whispered. "That night saved me." His thumb brushed a tear from her cheek, and she nearly collapsed into him, because those words were the ones she dreamed of hearing, prayed for in the darkness. For a moment, the world outside became silent. The wind stilled, and pain melted into something intimate, hopeful, terrifying. She inhaled, eyes glistening, and murmured, "It wasn't supposed to happen like this." Adrian's gaze dropped slowly, intentionally, landing on her stomach. His hand lifted, hesitating for the briefest second, as if asking for permission without a word. When his palm finally rested against her belly, a warmth spread through her entire body. And at that exact moment, the baby kicked. His breath hitched so sharply she felt it. A mixture of awe, fear, and overwhelming love flickered across his face like a secret setting itself free. "I'm not losing you this time," he vowed, voice deep and filled with fire. "I'm not losing our child." His hand cradled her like she was something precious, something he refused to let disappear. Then the helicopter suddenly tilted hard to the right, violently, like the world itself wanted to interrupt fate's second chance. Mia was thrown into Adrian's arms as alarms erupted in a terrifying chorus, red lights flashing across the cabin like a heartbeat gone wild. The pilots shouted commands, their voices drowned by the roar of wind and the shrill beeping of warning systems. Adrian wrapped both arms around her protectively, shielding her belly with his own body, like he'd throw himself into fire before letting harm touch her again. "Hold on!" he yelled, voice trembling for the first time. Mia's lungs squeezed tight as gravity shifted beneath her. The cabin jerked again, harder. Metal creaked, seats rattled, and loose items flew around them. Air whooshed out of her as fear wrapped itself around her throat. She couldn't even scream. Terror trapped every sound inside. The helicopter dropped, not far, but enough to make the world lurch sickeningly. Her fingers clawed at Adrian's jacket, clinging to him like he was the only thing keeping her alive. Lights flickered. Alarms morphed into one long, horrifying shriek. Her ears filled with the sound of wind tearing against the aircraft. Adrian held her tighter, whispering, "I've got you. I've got you," even though his voice trembled like a man facing the impossible. The windows flashed with city lights spinning out of control, skyscrapers turning into streaks of silver and glass. One wrong move, one wrong gust, and they would all be headlines tomorrow. Then, the cockpit lights exploded in a spark, and everything plunged into darkness. Silence swallowed them whole. Her heart stopped. His grip tightened. The helicopter kept falling. Everything went black. 4. They made an emergency landing on his rooftop, helicopter blades still slicing the storm-heavy air, as Adrian ripped off his headset and scooped Mia into his arms with a fierceness that made her heart shake. Doctors rushing forward with stretchers and masks and questions, but he ignored every single one of them, because the only thing he saw, the only thing that mattered in the entire world right now, was her trembling body and the child she insisted wasn't his. and he told them he would not take a single step toward treatment until she was safe first. His voice sharp with command, yet cracking under the weight of panic, and Mia tried to push him away, while insisting that he didn't owe her anything, that the baby wasn't his, that he should forget everything because loving her would destroy him, but his eyes burned with the kind of certainty that made lies useless as he told her he didn't need DNA to know the truth. His heart already believed that she was the only person who ever held him when he was broken, the only one who saw the lonely man behind the billionaire, the only one who made him laugh when life felt suffocating, confessing that he cared because she treated him like a human and not a headline, while her breath caught because the warmth she thought she had buried forever was rising again, dizzying her with memories of that night she tried so hard to forget. And just when her lips parted to speak the feelings she never dared admit, the elevator doors slid open with a violent chime, and a furious voice shattered the moment like glass as Liam stepped out, soaked from the storm, with fists clenched and eyes blazing with jealousy, shouting her name like he owned it, demanding to know what she was doing with Adrian, as if she wasn't capable of making her own choices. And Mia froze because his presence dragged fear up her spine like claws, memories of arguments and broken promises, and the way he twisted love into chains clashing violently with the fragile safety she felt in Adrian's arms. And Liam stormed toward her, glaring at Adrian with disgust, accusing him of manipulating her just because he was rich and powerful. But Adrian stepped forward protectively, jaw tight and shoulders squared like a shield ready for war, demanding to know why Liam thought he had any right to raise his voice at a pregnant woman. And Liam laughed, a dark, mocking sound, claiming the baby was his, that Mia belonged to him, that she would be coming home with him because he was the one who had been there first. And Mia's heart dropped, because he wasn't supposed to know about the baby yet. She had been running from that moment, terrified that the father question would become a battlefield she couldn't survive. But Adrian's face went pale before turning into a storm of rage as he demanded Mia tell the truth, needing her to deny Liam's claim because every heartbeat in Adrian's chest screamed that the child growing inside her was his, while Mia's trembling hands gripped her stomach as tears filled her eyes because the truth was complicated and painful and buried beneath threats Liam once made late at night when she tried to leave him, threats that she would lose everything and everyone if she ever dared expose what he had done to her. And Liam stepped closer with a false smile that dripped with venom, trying to grab her arm, saying she was confused and emotional, that she needed him, but Mia jerked away like his touch was fire, whispering, "Don't touch me," with a fear-sharpened voice that Adrian didn't miss. And in that instant, Adrian saw the truth, saw the danger, saw the history of hurt in her eyes. And he moved not like a billionaire, but like a man ready to burn the world for the woman he loved, grabbing Liam's wrist and twisting it away with low, controlled fury as Liam winced. But instead of backing down, he smirked, throwing a cruel taunt that Adrian didn't know the half of what Mia had done, hinting at secrets that made Mia's breath choke, because Liam wasn't just here to take her. He was here to ruin her, and the elevator dinged again as building security hurried out, unsure whether to intervene, waiting for a command that could turn this confrontation into chaos, while thunder growled above them like the sky itself was warning. Everything was about to change forever, and Mia's knees buckled slightly from the pressure of too many emotions colliding at once: love, fear, hope, panic. And Adrian instantly steadied her, protective arm around her waist, silently promising she would never fall alone again. But Liam's eyes landed on that tender touch like gasoline hitting flames, and he roared that Adrian had already ruined her life once, that he had taken advantage of her vulnerability, that he left her with nothing after their night together, forcing her to struggle alone while he lived in luxury. and guilt stabbed deep into Adrian's heart because he didn't know she had suffered so much. He never knew she had been fired in his name by someone who wanted her gone, and he swore that whoever did it would pay. But Liam laughed again, saying punishment was pointless because the damage was done, and Mia deserved better than a man who only now realized her worth, while Adrian countered that Liam couldn't speak about worth when he treated her like possession instead of partner, and Mia stood between two storms, unable to breathe, her hand instinctively protectively covering her belly as a sharp cramp hit her from stress. And Adrian noticed instantly, shouting for the doctor to move now as panic pulsed through his voice. But Liam tried to block the medical team, insisting she didn't need help from these people, claiming she was overreacting, telling her to come with him and they'd figure everything out like before. But his voice, once familiar, now sounded like danger wrapped in delusion, and Mia shook her head because she would no longer let fear decide her future, whispering that she wasn't going anywhere with him, that he didn't own her, that the baby's safety came before his ego, and Liam's expression cracked into something darker, his jealousy turning into threat as he hissed that if she stayed with Adrian, she would regret it. But Adrian stepped in front of her again, commanding security to remove Liam from the rooftop before he laid another finger on her. And as security approached, Liam struggled, yelling that this wasn't over, that he would prove the baby was his, that he knew secrets that would tear them apart, his voice echoing like a curse as he was dragged back into the elevator fighting and screaming her name. And the moment the doors sealed shut, the tension didn't disappear. It condensed into dread, coiling deep inside Mia's chest, because Liam was gone physically, but his threats lingered like poison in the air, while Adrian turned her gently toward him, voice quiet but trembling with urgency, as he asked if she was okay, if the baby was okay, if she trusted him enough to let him protect her from everything that haunted her past. And tears streamed now freely, because she wanted to say yes. She wanted to collapse into the safety he offered. She wanted to believe love could erase scars, but fear still clung to her ribs like ice, and she whispered that she didn't want to lose anyone again, not him, not the baby. And Adrian cupped her face with a tenderness that contrasted the storm still raging across the sky behind them, promising he would fight for her no matter what truth hurt or what enemy returned, because he was done pretending he didn't love her. But as the doctors finally moved her toward the medical suite, her pulse spiked in terror when she remembered Liam's final glare, a promise of destruction. And even as Adrian held her hand tightly, refusing to let go, Mia couldn't shake the feeling that the worst wasn't Liam's arrival. The worst was the secret she hadn't told Adrian yet, a truth that could break him long before a paternity test ever did. And as the doors shut behind them, her breath quivered, terrified that the next heartbeat could be the one where everything she loved turned to pain again. The doctors rushed Mia into the private medical suite just as the emergency lights flickered from the storm outside, Adrian refusing to let go of her hand, while her breath came in sharp gasps, fear tightening around her chest as she tried to steady herself. But before the door could close, Liam shoved past security like a man possessed, grabbing her arm with a strength that made her wince, yanking her back toward him while barking that she belonged with him, that she was his responsibility, his future, and Adrian tore him away so fast the motion nearly knocked Liam to the ground, his voice feral as he snarled that Liam lost all rights to speak about responsibility the moment he abandoned her, and Mia's eyes widened because Adrian had never looked so ready to destroy someone, the calm billionaire replaced by a storm of fury as he demanded Liam explain that day at the hospital why he left her crying in the rain with ultrasound results in her purse and hope bleeding out of her heart, and Liam's jaw tensed, panic flickering in his eyes for a split second before arrogance snapped back like a mask, saying Adrian didn't know anything, that he didn't have proof. But Adrian raised his hand and clicked on his phone, and a video popped open, and Mia froze when she saw the recording. The hospital hallway, her sitting alone on a bench, clutching her stomach, tears soaking through her dress. Then Liam walking out of the doctor's office, expression empty, ignoring her entirely as he strode out the doors without even glancing back, and everyone watching felt the weight of that moment crash into them like a punch. Liam's confidence crumbling as the truth he had buried for so long was dragged into the light. But instead of apologizing or breaking down, he started laughing, the sound hollow and jittery, eyes wide with a desperation that made him look dangerous as he spit out that he didn't care what anyone thought. Because Mia was his, the baby was his, and he would go to the media and expose everything. The billionaire CEO who knocked up a girl and tried to steal a child that wasn't his, and the threat hit like a detonated grenade, security stepping forward again, but Liam shoved past them with a last, shaky warning that if Adrian tried to silence him, he would make sure the world turned against him, before sprinting toward the exit, leaving a trail of rage and chaos behind him, as the elevator swallowed him whole and disappeared downward toward a war he had just declared. And the second he was gone, Mia felt a crushing, stabbing pain shoot through her belly like something tearing, her knees buckling as the world tilted and tilted and tilted until everything was spinning too fast. Her breath vanishing as terror clawed up her throat, and Adrian's face went white with panic as he shouted for the doctors while catching her just milliseconds before she hit the ground, his hands trembling as he held her to his chest and begged her to stay awake, but her vision blurred, colors melting into darkness, muffled voices echoing around her as she clung to consciousness for the sake of the tiny life inside her. But the pain kept rising in sharp waves that stole every ounce of strength she had left, and her fingers slipped out of Adrian's grip as the darkness swallowed her completely, leaving her body limp and cold in his arms while monitors screeched warnings that made his heart shatter, doctors rushing in like lightning to lift her onto a hospital bed, attaching wires, checking pulses, calling medical terms that Adrian didn't understand and didn't care to. All he saw was her stillness. All he heard was the silence of her voice. All he felt was the terror that he might lose both Mia and the baby before he even had the chance to prove he would die for them. And as the doctors pushed him back, urging him to give them space, Adrian's fists trembled at his sides, jaw clenched so hard it hurt, mind racing with every worst-case scenario as he stared at her pale face and whispered that she had to fight, she had to come back because he wasn't strong without her. And right when he thought it couldn't get worse, his phone buzzed aggressively in his pocket, and when he checked the screen he saw headlines already exploding online, photos of Mia on his rooftop, a blurry image of Liam shouting, rumors spiraling that the billionaire CEO was forcing a pregnant woman to stay with him, news outlets asking if the baby was the billionaire's scandal or some poor man's heartbreak, and Adrian's blood boiled because Liam hadn't even reached the ground floor before spreading poison, putting Mia's safety at even greater risk, and he felt so powerless being dragged away from her bedside as they rushed her into the emergency maternity ward, the doors slamming shut with that finality that felt like someone locking him away from the only hope he had ever known, and pacing like a caged animal outside the room. He vowed through clenched teeth that if anything happened to Mia or the baby, he would unleash hell on Liam, on the media, on the world that tried to rip his family apart before it even had a chance to exist. And deep inside the operating room, Mia lay unconscious, surrounded by bright lights and frantic hands, the sound of the baby's heartbeat, a fragile rhythm echoing against the chaos. And somewhere far beneath the pain and darkness swallowing her, she could hear Adrian's voice calling her back, could feel the warmth of his hand even though he wasn't physically touching her, and a single tear escaped the corner of her eye as her heart whispered that she couldn't give up, not now, not when love was finally trying to save her. But the machines suddenly beeped wildly, doctors shouting instructions louder, tension crackling through the air as they fought to stabilize her, while outside, Adrian pressed his forehead against the cold glass window, silently begging fate to spare them, unaware that Liam had not gone home, but was still inside the building, making a phone call that would trigger a disaster none of them were prepared for. Adrian's hands were still locked around Mia's wrist when the world seemed to tilt beneath her feet, and he caught her before she collapsed, his voice exploding into pure panic as he screamed for help, his expression more terrified than it had ever been in his entire ruthless life, because this wasn't business, this wasn't a negotiation, this was her. The paramedic stormed in, placing Mia carefully on a stretcher, and Adrian refused to let go, his knuckles white from how tightly he held her trembling fingers, as if letting go even for a second meant she would disappear. The flashing ambulance lights painted his face in pulses of red fear, while his jaw twitched uncontrollably, his breath shallow, his entire being shaking as though her collapse drained the oxygen from his own lungs too. Every bump of the ambulance floor made him grip her harder, his thumb gently brushing her cold skin while he whispered her name again and again, as if the sound of it could keep her alive. But even as she lay there, eyes half open, her other hand curled protectively over her stomach, the baby, their baby. The doctors inside already exchanging worried looks that stabbed right into Adrian's heart like knives. The hospital smell, sharp and sterile, hit him instantly as they rushed her inside, and the doors closed just before he could follow, leaving him frozen with a devastating realization that he had already failed her once, and he might lose both of them before he even got a chance to fight for them. His chest tightened as he stood there helpless, minutes stretching brutally into hours in his mind, until a doctor finally returned with a heavy file and an expression that drained the last bit of color from Adrian's face. "Extreme stress and malnutrition," the doctor said, and those few words felt like a sentence engraved into Adrian's bones. Mia had been suffering, starving, scared, alone. His vision blurred with disbelief and self-hatred. How many nights had she cried without him knowing? How many times had her hand rested over her belly, whispering to the child he unknowingly created, trying to keep them safe without a single supportive heartbeat beside her? The guilt hit him so violently his knees nearly gave out, because she should have been resting in silk sheets, treated like a queen, protected, not collapsing in a public place while he was busy trying to forget her. When they finally let him inside her room, Mia's eyes fluttered open slowly, and she attempted a weak smile that shattered him even more, because she was trying to comfort him when she was the one in danger. He sat beside her, voice cracking as he whispered, "You suffered alone. Because of me," the guilt dragging each word through his throat like glass. She tried to turn away, to hide the pain and protect her heart, murmuring that he wasn't part of her life anymore, that he didn't need to worry, but he cupped her face with trembling hands, a CEO known for unshakable calm now falling apart completely, and forced her to look right into the storm of emotions burning in his eyes. That night wasn't an accident, he confessed, breath shaking, memories of their passionate moment tearing through his chest like lightning. "I fell, and I fell for you." His confession soaked into the silence between them like warm sunlight after a storm, yet Mia's lips parted only with fear. Fear of believing in him again, fear of being destroyed again, fear that trusting him could cost more than her own heart this time. She opened her mouth to speak, maybe to admit she still loved him, maybe to tell him he was too late. But then suddenly, a stabbing pain shot through Adrian's chest. His entire body stiffened as if invisible chains wrapped around his lungs, and his hand flew to his chest in sheer agony. The monitor beside Mia began screaming in frantic beeps, warning alarms echoing through the room as Adrian gasped for breath, each inhale too short, too painful, too wrong. Mia bolted upright despite her weakness, hands reaching for him as he struggled to breathe, his skin turning pale, sweat beading at his temple, his eyes frantic not for his own survival, but because she was scared. Doctors rushed back in, shouting orders as they forced Mia back against the pillows, her cries shaking the air while Adrian's knees buckled, his body collapsing toward the cold tile floor. The last thing he saw before his vision blackened was Mia reaching out for him with pure terror in her eyes, and the last thing he felt was his heart fighting instead of giving up because he had someone to live for again. They ripped his shirt open, attaching pads to his chest while a nurse yelled numbers, and Mia could only watch in horror as the man who ruled skyscrapers and crushed empires was now helpless on a hospital floor, his heartbeat skipping like a fragile candle flame in wind. The doctor shouted, "Possible cardiac event!" and the words echoed in Mia's skull as tears streamed down her trembling cheeks. She was too afraid to blink, because what if he didn't open his eyes again? What if her silence was the last thing he heard? What if the father of her child, the man her heart still beat for, died without ever hearing her real answer? The nurses tried pushing her bed away for safety, but she fought, screaming his name with everything she had left, every syllable ripping straight from her soul like a plea to the universe. "Don't take him." Adrian's lips parted as if trying to speak her name one more time, but only a shallow gasp escaped before his body went still, too still, and Mia's heart stopped along with his. For a terrifying second, every machine went flat, one long continuous alarm filling the room like a scream from death itself, and Mia felt something inside her tear apart, a fear darker than any nightmare rising in her throat. Tears drenched her pillow as her hand pressed to her stomach. If he doesn't come back, their child will never know his heartbeat, his laughter, his love. "Adrian, please," she whispered, voice shattered. "Don't leave us." Then, a jolt. His body lifted off the floor as the defibrillator shocked him back. Once, twice, the doctor yelling, "Clear!" Each time, electricity snapping through the air like thunder, and finally, a heartbeat, weak but there, uncertain but fighting. The machine beeped again, then again, and Mia sobbed in relief, her body shaking so violently the nurse had to steady her shoulders, but she didn't care. He was still here. He was still fighting, for her, for their baby, for the love he finally admitted. But as they stabilized him and prepared to move him to ICU for more tests, another dread settled across Mia's chest like ice. What if this was just the beginning? What if his heart didn't crash because of physical stress, but because she was his greatest weakness? And the most terrifying question of all, would Adrian wake up remembering that confession, or would he wake up forgetting the love that just saved him, and the baby that could cost him everything? 7. The moment Adrian's heartbeat returned and the machine steadied into a fragile rhythm, relief and terror clashed inside Mia like thunder. He lay there pale, oxygen mask clinging to his face, every breath sounding like a battle he was determined to win. Mia's trembling fingers reached out, gently brushing the back of his hand, needing the warmth, needing the proof that he was really still here and hadn't slipped away forever. Her tears hadn't even dried when his eyelids twitched, fluttering open with painful slowness, as though he was dragging himself back from the edge of darkness purely because she called his name. His gaze struggled to focus, but the first thing he saw, the first thing he fought for, was her. "My family," he breathed, voice cracked and broken, yet carrying the rawest truth he had ever spoken in his life. That whisper shattered her defenses all over again, because despite everything, the fights, the heartbreak, the lies, his first thought after almost dying was, them. Before she could respond, the door creaked open and the doctor stepped in holding a sealed envelope, one that suddenly made Mia's pulse pound so violently she could hear her heartbeat in her ears, the paternity test, the undeniable truth. Adrian's eyes, still glassy and heavy with exhaustion, locked onto the envelope as if it were destiny wrapped in paper. His fingers shook as the doctor placed it into his hand, and Mia felt like she couldn't breathe as he tore the seal open with trembling urgency. She watched every flicker of his expression, confusion, shock, disbelief, and then something deeper, something powerful enough to steal his breath again, love. A single tear escaped the corner of his eye as he whispered, voice trembling, 99.9%. She's ours. For a heartbeat, the entire world froze around them. No sirens, no hospital noise, just the miracle of truth echoing through their souls. Mia's hands flew to her face, overwhelmed by fear, relief, and a pain that had been locked away far too long. She hadn't imagined that night. She hadn't raised this life alone for nothing. Adrian was the father, but they didn't get a second, not even a single precious moment, to fully absorb the revelation. The door suddenly slammed open, banging against the wall as a breathless nurse rushed inside, panic painted across her face like a warning signal. "Sir, Liam leaked everything. Reporters are surrounding the hospital." The name struck Mia like a stab to the chest, her stomach twisting as the nurse continued, "They know about the baby. They know about the collapse. They know you are the woman in the viral scandal. Cameras, microphones, tabloids, all hungry for chaos, were waiting just outside the vulnerable walls that protected her and the fragile life inside her womb." Mia's eyes widened, adrenaline rushing through her trembling body as her hand instinctively shielded her belly, the instinct to protect her unborn child stronger than any fear she had ever known. Adrian, still weak, attempted to sit up in pure defiance, but the wires and fresh pain held him down, his jaw clenching with fury. Liam was trying to destroy the woman he almost lost and the family he'd just regained. The doctor tried calming them, saying they would increase security, but rumors travel faster than any locked door, faster than any medical plan, and the reporters were already shouting Mia's name out in the hallway. People were pointing fingers, speculating cruel stories, turning her pregnancy into entertainment, and she could hear their lies through the walls. She trapped him. She's a gold digger, secret lover, every accusation slicing into her heart. Adrian reached for her hand again, squeezing as much strength into that grip as his weakened body allowed, eyes blazing with protective fire, even while fear hid beneath the surface. "No one touches you," he managed weakly, his voice thin but filled with deadly promise. But Mia's lips quivered, the reality sharp and unforgiving. Adrian was in no condition to fight, and she was the perfect target, vulnerable, exhausted, suffocating in the spotlight of a truth she wasn't ready to share. Security tried clearing hallways, but the chaos only grew louder. Flashes of cameras breaking past the glass, reporters screaming questions with no humanity in their voices, like vultures circling a wounded heart. Mia's breaths sped up, the pressure in her chest rising too fast, fear curling around her throat. What if stress triggered another collapse? What if the baby reacted to her panic? What if this nightmare ended in tragedy before the truth could even be celebrated? Adrian saw the terror gripping her and tried again to rise, his muscles shaking violently as pain shot through him. He needed to stand between her and the world, even if standing alone could kill him. A doctor held him down, warning his heart wasn't stable, but Adrian refused to lie there, watching the woman he loved break again. "Mia," he whispered, and the urgency in his eyes told her everything. He would rather die fighting for her than survive without them. Mia wiped her tears, but couldn't calm the tremor in her hands. Her mind kept spinning with every terrifying possibility. Liam's leak wasn't an accident. It was revenge, and that meant he wasn't finished. The thought made her shiver violently. Adrian noticed and pulled her closer, despite the wires tugging against his body, his hand resting protectively over hers on her belly, as if he could shield both of them just by touching them. She rested her forehead against his, soaking up his warmth, his heartbeat, the silent vows he couldn't voice yet, and for a fleeting second, the world shrank to just the three of them, until another voice pierced through the false calm like a knife. "We must move her," a security officer declared, stepping in. "They will break in soon." Mia's pulse surged. Move her? Where? Why separation now when she just got him back? She clutched Adrian's hand tighter, fear sharpening again. She didn't want to be alone with the storm outside when the only safety she had left was lying in a hospital bed barely surviving. Adrian tried to protest, but his voice cracked with the effort, and the doctors insisted he remain under emergency care. The officer stepped closer, whispering only loud enough for Mia to hear, "Reporters are demanding you. Your name, your face, your story. If they break through, it won't be him they rush. It will be you. And the baby." That sentence stole every bit of air Mia had. She covered her belly with both arms. Protect, protect, protect. The single instinct screaming through her veins. Adrian tried to sit again, but the pain shot through him so harshly that monitors reacted instantly, alarms going wild. Nurses rushed in, pushing him gently back down, warning that another cardiac episode could strike. His eyes, filled with panic and desperation, locked onto Mia. He couldn't go with her. He couldn't follow. He was too weak to fight. He could only watch, and that helplessness destroyed him more than any physical agony ever could. Mia shook her head fiercely, tears falling faster. "I'm not leaving you." Because how could she? He nearly died saying he wanted his family, and now she was being asked to run from him. Adrian used every ounce of breath he had left to whisper her name again, like a plea, like a command, like a promise. "Mia, protect her." His eyes flickered toward her stomach, the life that demanded both their strength. Mia's chest cracked under that reality. She wasn't just fighting for love anymore. She was fighting for their daughter's future, but if she stayed, the reporters would tear into her before Adrian could even get out of bed. If she left without him, she would be ripping a fragile family apart again. Her heart split in two. Stay and risk chaos, or leave and face it alone. Outside, pounding on walls began, cameras slamming, voices shouting, security struggling. The hospital was becoming a fortress, one fragile door knock away from crumbling. The nurse grabbed Mia urgently. "We don't have time!" Adrian reached toward her, voice breaking with a rawness she had never heard, not even the night she left him before. "Mia, come back to me." His fingers slipped from hers, not because he let go, but because circumstances ripped them apart. Mia was pushed into a wheelchair to be moved through a back route before the reporters flooded in, but her head snapped back to him again and again as the distance grew between them, her heart screaming even when her lips stayed silent. She didn't want this separation. She didn't choose it. But right now, safety came second to survival. And survival meant keeping their daughter away from flashing lights and poisonous accusations that could destroy an innocent life before it even began. As they wheeled her away, Mia's breathing quickened, adrenaline burning through her, fear fueling each heartbeat. Because she wasn't just leaving Adrian behind, she was stepping into a battlefield where Liam was already waiting to strike again. And somewhere behind those hospital walls, reporters were already yelling her name like a headline. Mia, CEO's secret pregnant lover. Her identity exposed. Her pregnancy exploited. Her freedom gone. Adrian lay helpless, doctors forcing him to stay down while his heart monitors beeped aggressively with every surge of panic. His gaze stayed fixed on the last place he saw Mia disappear, his hand still raised in the air as if it could reach her. His chest rose and fell in shaky breaths as anger twisted into a vow. Liam would pay. And when Adrian gets strong enough to leave this bed, the world will learn what a man does when someone threatens the heartbeat he almost died for. But for now, Mia was being pushed into shadows, hidden corridors, a rushed escape, while the enemy tightened his trap outside. And with every turn the wheelchair made, every hallway she passed, a single chilling thought filled her mind like approaching thunder. If Liam revealed the baby to destroy Adrian, what else was he planning now that the truth was out? Security rushed Mia through the hospital's hidden service passages, away from the roaring chaos that Liam unleashed, and every wheel of the chair squeaked like a countdown threatening to crush her sanity. She kept twisting her head back, eyes swollen and desperate, trying to catch one more glimpse of Adrian, the man she had just gotten back, the father of the child she was fighting to protect. But the doors closed behind her like steel walls separating love by force. She didn't even get a final goodbye, only the echo of his voice begging her to return, a sound that burned into her ribs like a sacred vow she would die keeping. Outside, night cloaked the escape route in secrecy as black SUVs rolled forward, shielding her from cameras like armor. Armed guards formed a living shield around her, but the real danger followed like a shadow she couldn't outrun. Liam's revenge tasted like gasoline, ready to ignite everything she cared about. When they finally reached Adrian's private estate, a mansion veiled in towering walls and cutting-edge security, Mia could still feel the tremors of fear crawling beneath her skin, every step reminding her she was hunted. The gates slammed shut with a thunderous finality, cutting off the world's chaos, leaving behind silence too heavy to trust. But before she could process the shift from escape to safety, the doors burst open and Adrian appeared, still weak, still pale, still recovering, but on his feet. Ignoring the doctor's warnings, he had fought his way out of the hospital just to make sure she wasn't alone. Their eyes collided across the marble foyer, two hearts battered but still beating for each other. He rushed to her, breath short and uneven, hands trembling as they cupped her face like he was checking if she was real and not another nightmare trying to take her from him. And then he pulled her into his arms, tightly, like losing her again would end him. He lowered his forehead to hers, breathing in every tear on her cheeks, every sob that slipped free as panic melted into fragile relief. "I thought I lost you," he whispered, voice rough with fear he didn't bother to hide. She clutched his shirt, burying her face into his chest as if anchoring herself to the only part of the world that mattered anymore. Him. The scent of him, the warmth of him, the protection in his arms, it was everything she had been starved of for months. Her tears soaked into the fabric, her shaking slowly easing as his arms wrapped tighter around her like a fortress. And when she finally breathed steady again, he cupped her jaw gently, forcing her to look into eyes that held storms and sunrises all at once. With a voice so quiet it trembled, he confessed the truth he'd been too afraid to speak. "Do you know why I fell for you again?" His thumb traced her cheek, soft and reverent. "Because when everyone in my life used me, you didn't want anything from me. You didn't want my money, my power, not even my name." He inhaled sharply, emotion swelling until he nearly choked on it. "You saved me, without even knowing I needed saving. You cared about the man, not the CEO." His fingertips slid to her heart, right where it raced for him. "You were my peace then. You are my home now." Her lips parted, a sob, a breath, a confession, and she collapsed into his embrace, crying harder, not from pain this time, but from the terrifying relief of letting herself love him without fear. Adrian held her tenderly, kissing the crown of her head, his hand cradling her belly protectively, as if to say, "I'm here now. I'm not leaving." And then he whispered the words she had dreamed of, but never believed she deserved. "Stay with me. Forever." The sentence wrapped around her soul like a safe blanket, and her heart, exhausted from running and breaking, finally chose him. She nodded against his chest, whispering yes, 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 into the fabric like a prayer. Just as his breath warmed her forehead, just as safety finally seeped into her bones, a sharp, horrifying pain shot through her lower stomach. Mia gasped, the kind of gasp that doesn't come from fear, but from her body screaming to warn her. And when she looked down, the floor beneath her became slick. Her water broke, 6 weeks early. Her knees buckled, hands clutching her belly as a wave of agony crashed through her entire body. Adrian's eyes went wide, panic destroying the brief peace they just found, as his arms caught her before she could hit the marble. "Mia!" he shouted, voice cracking so violently it echoed off the walls like gunfire. Sirens blared automatically, estate medical alarms triggered for emergency response, and guards shouted commands as nurses rushed inside. Everything became a whirlwind of frantic motion as they lifted her into medical transport. Adrian climbed in beside her despite doctors screaming that his heart rate was unstable. He refused to be separated from her again. Her scream tore the night apart, raw fear and agony mixing in a sound that threatened to break him. "It's too soon," Mia sobbed, squeezing his hand so hard she left crescent marks in his skin, her eyes wide with terror. He pressed his forehead to hers, voice trembling. "Breathe, baby. I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere. I swear." But his own chest tightened painfully. He was barely holding himself together while trying to hold her too. The ambulance bounced over the road, lights flashing violently against her pale face, sweat dripping down her neck as another contraction tore through her. Her heartbeat monitor spiked chaotically, then, abruptly, slowed. Too slow. The paramedic's expression darkened as numbers dipped dangerously low and Mia's grip loosened around Adrian's hand. "Her heart rate is dropping," the nurse shouted, panic slicing through the space like a blade. Adrian's eyes widened in terror. His breath hitched. Not again. He had just gotten her back. He had just been given a family. He had just learned what forever could feel like. He couldn't lose them. Not like this. Not when he hadn't even had a chance to live a single normal moment with them. He grabbed her face gently, his thumb trembling as he wiped sweat from her brow. "Mia, look at me," he begged. But her eyes flickered unfocused, her breath growing weaker, each inhale shorter than the last. She tried to speak, his name, but the sound was barely a whisper. Adrian shook his head fiercely, refusing to accept the fear swallowing him whole. "You're strong," he whispered, kissing her knuckles. "You survived everything life threw at you. Don't stop now. Don't let go now." Tears streamed down his cheeks. The strongest man brought to his knees by love he couldn't afford to lose. Another contraction, sharper, harsher, hit her like a knife twist. She screamed again, voice fading halfway through, her entire body shaking as if her strength was draining faster than her heartbeat. The nurse called for immediate prep. Emergency delivery might be the only chance, but even that was risky with her heart slowing like a dying clock. Adrian held her against his chest, whispering promises that felt like desperation disguised as hope. "Forever, remember? You promised to stay with me. We're not done. You haven't seen our daughter's eyes. You haven't yelled at me for being overprotective yet." He tried to smile through the tears, but fear made his voice crack and shake. Mia's breathing hitched, once, twice, then faltered. Her eyelids fluttered, too heavy to keep open. "Adrian," she choked out weakly, tears pooling as panic flickered for a split second in her gaze before dimming. Her head dropped slightly, her hand slipped from his. The monitor shrieked a warning again, erratic rhythm, dangerously low. Nurses shouted for more oxygen, more meds, more everything, but Adrian heard none of it. All he registered was the silence between each of her breaths, silence louder than any scream, silence that sounded like goodbye. He pulled her closer, holding her as if his body could shield her from death. "Mia, please, don't leave me." His voice finally broke completely, the sound of a man whose heart had already flatlined, even if the machines hadn't yet. He kissed her forehead, not a claim, not desire, but the most desperate promise of his life. "I will fight for you, even if you can't fight anymore." But as the ambulance doors slammed shut behind them and they raced toward the operating room, a chilling truth sliced through the chaos like a blade. Love wasn't the danger anymore. Time was. 9. The world felt like it had been ripped away from Adrian's hands the moment Mia's pulse dropped, and her eyes fluttered like a candle fighting the wind. Time twisted into something cruel as doctors pushed him out of the surgical room and slammed the doors shut, his palms still sticky with her fear, and his heart pounding like it wanted to burst free and run to her. He stood in the hallway, unable to breathe, staring at the red light above the operating room, as if his devotion could will it to change. His voice barely a whisper, but shaking like a man about to lose everything. "Please, save them. I can't live without them." And the strongest billionaire in the city suddenly sank to his knees, fists against the cold, sterile floor, tears falling without shame as memories crashed against him. Mia laughing in the cab that first night, Mia crying when she thought she had to raise the baby alone, Mia forgiving him when she had every reason to run, Mia choosing him even when her heart was terrified. Every second felt like punishment for the months he wasted believing she had betrayed him, every heartbeat a reminder he was late to love, but desperate to protect. Nurses rushed by, alarms beeped, chaos moved like a storm inside the room while he stayed frozen outside, losing the war with his own fear, realizing that if love was fire, then he had stepped in willingly, hoping it burned him before it took her. He prayed, something he never did, promising the universe, God, destiny, anyone who would listen, that he would be a better man, a better husband, a better father if only they would be spared. Then, after what felt like an eternity longer than all his success and loneliness combined, silence struck like a blade, too sharp, too final, and Adrian's soul cracked because silence in a hospital was the scariest sound a lover could ever hear. But then, through that silence, a small yet fierce cry cut through the air like a miracle demanding to be heard, the cry of a newborn life fighting to exist. Adrian's head lifted instantly, breath caught in his throat, his heart sprinting faster than his feet as he stumbled forward, palm pressed flat against the glass, just as a nurse emerged with a tiny red-faced baby wrapped in a soft blanket, dark hair already visible like Mia's, fists balled like a warrior. And Adrian gasped because he never thought beauty could fit into something so small. His voice broke into pieces as he whispered, "That's my daughter." The word daughter tasting sweeter than anything money could buy, his trembling fingers reaching out but unable to touch. Not yet. Not until he knew Mia was safe. Fear still clung to his spine like chains as doctors continued inside, their voices sharp, urgent, and for a moment his joy turned into torture, because what if this miracle came with the price of Mia's life? The nurse gently guided him toward the NICU, where they quickly checked the baby's vitals, assuring him she was strong despite arriving early. But Adrian couldn't relax, not without Mia. He paced like a caged storm, torn between running to his child and breaking down the door to find her. His love split, but his heart loyal to both. Then, another shift in the air. The surgical doors opened again and a doctor stepped out, exhaustion weighing on his shoulders, but hope shining in his eyes. Adrian didn't wait for permission. He rushed toward him, fear shaking through his words. "Mia, please, my wife, is she alive?" And the doctor gave the only answer Adrian needed. "She's asking for you." Those 4 words shattered him in the most beautiful way, relief flooding him so forcefully, his vision blurred, breath stolen by gratitude. He followed the doctor into the room where Mia lay, pale, weak, yet undeniably alive, her eyelashes fluttering like she was trying to open her eyes just for him. Adrian crossed the room in seconds. The man who once controlled empires now trembling harder than any storm he'd survived, taking Mia's hand gently as if it were a fragile treasure. Her lips curved into a tiny smile when she saw him, a smile that could rebuild worlds, and she whispered with a voice thinned by pain, but strengthened by love, "Our baby." Did she make it? Adrian nodded, a tear falling onto her cheek as he pressed his forehead to hers, whispering, "She's strong, like her mother." A nurse brought their daughter in, the tiny miracle swaddled and breathing softly, and as Adrian held her for the first time, his heart melted into something unrecognizable, tender, overflowing, terrified but fearless because love had reshaped him. He looked at her tiny nose, her little fingers curling around his thumb like she trusted him already, and for the first time in years, the future didn't look dark, it looked like family. He carried the baby to Mia and carefully placed their daughter on her chest, and Mia inhaled sharply, overwhelmed by a love she had never known existed, tears sliding down her temples as she touched the baby's back. Tiny bones, warm skin, life she helped create out of heartbreak and second chances. Adrian bent closer, his tears dropping onto both girls, whispering with a cracked voice as he kissed Mia's hair. "You texted me by mistake, but maybe it was fate telling me not to miss my family twice." And Mia turned her face to him, pressing the softest kiss to her daughter's head before whispering back, "Not a mistake, a second chance." Their daughter opened her eyes for the very first time, dark and deep like she carried both of their futures inside her, and Adrian and Mia both gasped, stunned by how much love could fit into a single moment. Adrian leaned his forehead against Mia's again, their daughter nestled safely between them, and he exhaled like a man finally home after years of being lost. Mia closed her eyes in peace, knowing she no longer had to fight alone, knowing the man holding them was no longer just a billionaire. He was her heart, her protector, her forever, and in that glowing room filled with new life and redemption, Adrian made a silent vow. No more fear, no more distance, no more pain that wasn't shared. He would spend every breath making them feel chosen, safe, and loved beyond reason. He gently kissed Mia, a soft promise sealed with warm lips and trembling joy, as their daughter squeezed their fingers with surprising strength, as if claiming her place in their love story, reminding them she was the miracle that chose them both. Outside, the world would soon learn that the coldest CEO was brought to his knees by love, that a mistaken message created a family destiny tried to destroy but failed to erase. But inside this quiet room, where heartbeat monitors and newborn breaths played the music of miracles, Adrian, Mia, and their little girl existed in a perfect universe of their own. Three souls bound by fate, stitched together by faith, healed by love. And as dawn's first light spilled into the room, washing everything in a gentle gold, Adrian whispered one last truth against Mia's lips. "Forever starts now." And Mia smiled, the kind of smile that meant no matter how many storms life dared to send, love had already won. Thank you for staying with me till the end of this roller coaster of love and destiny. If this story touched your heart, make sure you smash that subscribe button, give this video a big thumbs up, and share it with someone who loves emotional billionaire romance as much as you do. And hey, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment telling me your favorite moment, because your feedback inspires the next chapter of Beyond Color Stories. Until we meet again, keep believing in love, keep dreaming big, and never forget, your story isn't over yet.